How do you get prior knowledge on a specific subject matter really quickly? Well, this is how you actually do it. Hi, I'm Allick Delancy, psychologist working in the field of mental health and education. And today I want to talk about how you can actually get prior knowledge very, very quickly. A matter of fact, this could be done in less than an hour. Keep in mind, the statements made here are based on my views or opinions, as well as research I will have done for this video. Now, it's true that as students, you want to be able to get as much information crammed into your brain as quickly as possible. But sometimes you might be doing a course, maybe it's in geography or maybe it's a foreign language, maybe it's French or Spanish, and you really don't have much prior knowledge of the topic. So what do? Okay, so you have to be able to prime your brain. Now, to prime the brain, it's really very simply stated. It's being able to pass over something once, pass over it again. Once you pass over it a second time, then you kind of will have seen it before because your brain will have somewhat be primed because you did it once before. So, very simplistic, but think of it that way. Now, here how you can do it. So, some students say, I'm reading my notes over and over and it just doesn't stick. Now, the truth is, reading notes over and over, some things will stick, right? It's not like you never saw a specific idea in a sentence in the notes, right? Hardly likely that will happen. So something does stick because you will have seen it before. So your brain was kind of primed for that particular sentence or so before. But here we're talking about not just a sentence. You want to be able to get the concept from off the page or from off the screen into your brain so that you'll be able to explain it maybe for a quiz or maybe for a test or maybe for a presentation or something like that. Okay, so here's how you do it. The thing is, you want to be able to read your notes, right? That's how you're going to get information into your brain. But here's how you read it. So you want to take your book, maybe it's the textbook that you have, maybe it's in hard copy or soft copy or whatever. You take that textbook and you start skimming through. So this is, you're just going through very quickly. So maybe it's a chapter, you're just going through the chapter very quickly. You not necessarily want to read word for word if you could, because you're a fast reader, well, that's up to you. But you're just going through very quickly, you're skimming through, you're skipping stuff. If you recognize that, okay, this is something I really didn't get the idea, I didn't understand too well, just take note of it, probably take note of the page it is on. This is not you trying to memorize anything here. This is you simply reading through the notes. You're just reading through the topic. You're just going to look at these subheadings. Maybe you just look at the graphs, if there are any, look at the tables, and you just keep going through. You skim, you skip, you take some small notes. Now, this is not any elaborate notes. You're not trying to make summary of any sentences or anything like that. You're just going through as quickly as possible. Let's say, for example, you take maybe half of an hour to do this, just going through. Maybe you had your stopwatch and you're using maybe a Pomodoro kind of style technique. So you set your stopwatch maybe on 30 minutes and you just go through all the notes. Maybe it takes you a little bit more, maybe it takes you a little less, but you go through all the notes. What do you do next? Well, you simply try to build on prior knowledge. Now, where's the prior knowledge? There's where the second time you go over it, your brain will have been primed the first time. So now, the second time that you're going over it, you're trying to probably look at the areas you didn't quite understand. Look at the areas that were a little difficult. Maybe you took a note, the page number, maybe the paragraph, where it was. And you try to isolate those particular paragraphs or that particular page that you really didn't understand. The concepts were brand new to you at the time you went through it the first time. The second time, you now have some prior knowledge of what you did not know as well as what you do know. And you also have an idea of how quickly you went through it the first time. So the second time, you can also set a 30 minutes. You're going through it again. This time, when you're going through, The things that you already know, there's no need to really spend long periods on those because you already know them. Just going it over and over and over again and already knowing that particular piece of the content is not going to help you. You already know it. So you spend a little more time on the things that were brand new to you. Keep in mind, this is the second time you're going through it. There will be things you still will not understand. You go through those notes again. And as you're going through, you're spending some more time on the things that you kind of didn't grasp. And there might be quite a bit of things you didn't grasp, especially it's a new subject. Maybe it's a foreign language. There are things you didn't grasp at all, but you're going through it again. When you reach to the end, you think about, okay, what is this whole body of information all about? This is the second time I'm seeing it. I looked at it once, my brain was primed, I looked at it the second time. What is this all about? You can now take a piece of paper, maybe it's a clean sheet of paper, maybe it has lines, whatever you want, and you write down, maybe in point form. It doesn't have to be in logical order, but you write down some of the things that you remember studying or reading a little while ago. So let's say hours pass, you stop, and you go through this process. You write down all the things that you remember. Again, does not have to be in order, you're just writing. So you're doing a brain dump, as it were, based on what you went through. You're putting it down on paper and you're just going through it. At the end of it, you might look at the paper and realize, well, I really didn't learn much. However, you don't want to be overly stressed by that. Remember, this is just the second time you went through the content. You now want to go through the content a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time. But this time, try to see if you can reduce the amount of time. So if the first time you took like 30 minutes on it, the second time, see if you can take like 25 minutes. The other time, see if you can cut it down until you probably just reach at 10 minutes where you just go through the information. Keep in mind too that every time you go through the information, you are spending a little time on the things that you did not grasp or the things you didn't understand. You're not going to spend a whole little time on things you already know, things that you already figure out. Let's say at the end of your study period, you took maybe 2 hours. All right, you took maybe 2 hours. You then, at the conclusion of that 2 hours, ask yourself, what did I just learn? What did I just capture? You take another sheet of paper, a clean sheet of paper, and you take your pen or you take your pencil or what have you, and you write down all that you know about the subject matter. Now, I know that some students may say, well, I like to type. Some students even say, I type faster than I write. Maybe so. I looked at some research that seemed to suggest that writing down pencil or pen in hand on a piece of paper seemed to help in aiding memory, aiding retrieval. So you write it down. I'll always recommend you use that. Pencil, paper, or pen and paper, and you write it down. If you have a tablet and you can write on the tablet, electronic paper, then fine. Do that, but write it down. Don't necessarily use the keyboard. Now, if it is, you find that when you write, you want to do a little experiment, and another time you do a similar study session and you use the keyboard, and for some reason you test yourself and you recognize that you remember more when using the keyboard, then fine, go ahead, use the keyboard. In a situation like this, it may not be any hard and fast rule. So you use the keyboard, but I will just recommend, based on my preference, to handwrite and based on what the research is saying currently. It may change in the future, but right now it seems to suggest that using the hand to write helps in memory retrieval of information. So use this method and see how it works, this reading through. So it's not just reading the notes over and over and over again, but it's reading the notes in a strategic way. It's reading the notes, skipping, skimming, taking notes along the way of things that you didn't quite understand. It's not about rote memory the first time. You're not going to memorize anything the first time. This is simply having your brain recognize some patterns in the body of work, recognize some patterns on the page, recognize some patterns on the table, on the graphs. That's all it's about. It's not about memorizing anything. The second time around, you will have recognized, based on the notes that you took, or based on what you recognized you didn't understand, the second time around, you spend time on the things you didn't understand. You're forcing your brain to recognize that, okay, there are some things I already know, but there's urgency to learn or to make sense of that which I don't know as yet. And as you continue to drop the time and drop the time, that's what your brain is going to be experiencing, that level of urgency. You're not going to spend a whole set of time behind things you already know, because it just won't make sense to spend that time, right? At the conclusion of each session or so, maybe the second or the third and the fourth session, you take that piece of paper, take that pen or that pencil, and you write down everything that you know. Maybe try to do that in less than 2 minutes. It shouldn't be a long process. Less than 2 minutes, you write down every single thing that you know on the subject, and then you go move on. Of course, feel free to take breaks between this. Some students are not able to sit down and focus for very long, so 2 hours could really be a lot on you. So in between these reading sessions and these note sessions, you probably can take like a 2-minute break. Right? Don't take a whole lot of time, because you want to use your 2 hour effectively, right? So I hope that this content was valuable or helpful to you. Again, please like, and you can always share with someone else. All the best on your studies, and take care.